Right. And we made it. We prepared a huge document in Istanbul that was initialed by the head of the Ukrainian delegation. He affixed his signature to some of the provisions, not to all of it. He put his signature, and then he himself said, "We were ready to sign it, and the war would have been over long ago, 18 months ago. However, Prime Minister Johnson came,
Call it, Randy.
and we missed that chance." Well, you missed it, you made a mistake. Let them get back to that, that is all. Why do we have to bother ourselves and correct somebody else's mistakes? I know one can say it is our mistake. It was us who intensified the situation and decided to put an end to the war that started in 2014 in Donbass, as I have already said, by means of weapons. Let me get back to further in history. I already told you this. We were just discussing it. Let us go back to 1991, when we were promised that NATO would not expand, to 2008, when the doors to NATO opened to the declaration of state sovereignty of Ukraine, declaring Ukraine a neutral state. Let us go back to the fact that NATO and US military bases started to appear on the territory of Ukraine, creating threats to us. Let us go back to coup d'etat in Ukraine in 2014. It is pointless though, isn't it? We may go back and forth endlessly, but they stopped negotiations. Is it a mistake? Yes. Correct it. We are ready. What else is needed?
Do you think it's too humiliating at this point for NATO to accept Russian control of what was 2 years ago Ukrainian territory?
I said let them think how to do it with dignity. There are options if there is a will. Up until now, there has been the uproar and screaming about inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia on the battlefield. Now they are apparently coming to realize that it is difficult to achieve, if possible at all. In my opinion, it is impossible by definition. It is never going to happen. It seems to me that now those who are in power in the West have come to realize this as well.
Biden's coming out.
If so, if the realization has set in, they have to think what to do next. We are ready for this.
He's talking about how he's
Congratulations.
didn't do anything bad.
And just keep the situation where it is now.
You know, it is a subject matter for the negotiations. No one is willing to conduct, or to put it more accurately, they're willing, but do not know how to do it. I know they want to. It is not just I see it, but I know they do want it. But they're struggling to understand how to do it. They have driven the situation to the point where we are at. It is not us who have done that. It is our partners, opponents who have done that. Well, now let them think how to reverse the situation. We're not against it. It would be funny if it were not so sad. This endless mobilization in Ukraine, the hysteria, the domestic problems, sooner or later it will result in agreement. You know, this probably sounds strange given the current situation. But the relations between the two peoples will be rebuilt anyway. It will take a lot of time, but they will heal. I'll give you very unusual examples. There is a combat encounter on the battlefield. Here's a specific example. Ukrainian soldiers got encircled. This is an example from real life. Our soldiers were shouting to them, "There is no chance. Surrender yourselves. Come out and you will be alive." Suddenly, the Ukrainian soldiers were screaming from there in Russian, perfect Russian, saying, "Russians, do not surrender." And all of them perished. they still identify themselves as Russian.
Wow.
What is happening is, to a certain extent, an element of a civil war. Everyone in the West thinks that the Russian people have been split by hostilities forever. No, they will be reunited. The unity is still there. Why are the Ukrainian authorities dismantling the Ukrainian Orthodox Church? Because it brings together not only the territory, it brings together our souls. No one will be able to separate the soul. Shall we end here, or is there anything else?
No, I think that's great. Thank you, Mr. President. Free speech is bigger than any one person or any one organization. Societies are defined by what they will not.
Well, that was the most boring damn thing I've ever seen.
Большое спасибо.
Well, this Biden press conference is getting pretty heated right now. I'll tell you that.
Oh Lord.
Should we? I don't know if we want to tune into this Biden press conference or not.
It's not really.
I would
worth it.
rather
Like,
not.
it can be summed up in him just not taking accountability and then getting badgered by reporters about his age and his memory.
No way.
Yes.
He's going to gaslight. He's going to say we need more money for Ukraine, and it's all Trump's fault. And
He had a very flaccid attempt at appearing to be intimidating too. That did not go over as what he intended.
Get off my lawn.
Let's go. I think we need a little excitement here. Let's go. Welcome to Bitcoin Veterans. This is a special episode. It is late. We obviously have been covering, or at least watching, the press conference between Tucker Carlson and Vladimir Putin. 2 hours of nonstop, I don't know, just letdowns. I was really hoping for a lot more, but yeah, this is Bitcoin Veterans. We do this usually every 7 o'clock on Thursday. East Coast time here in the States. Welcome to everybody out there. Thank you guys for tuning in and being with us a little off schedule tonight. We thought this was probably one of those that we needed to watch. Geopolitical stuff is, I guess, kind of in our wheelhouse a little bit as guys that have been around and done some things. And, obviously Bitcoin Veterans is around to, share the passion and mission that, we all signed up for in the first place. And that was to make sure that the United States and our fellow men and women here are just safe. So, guys, I don't know about you, but I was waiting for Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton and Barack Obama and George Bush and Secretary of State, the rest of these guys just getting thrown under the bus tonight. And what I saw was a very diplomatic Vladimir Putin. I think he probably knew anything that he was going to say tonight could be taken as a madman, somebody who was trying to spin up a lot of controversy, and it seemed like that was the last thing he wanted to do.
I agree. I think some of the punches that he pulled, I can see a strategical reason for. I would say probably 3/4 of them I can understand. And I think that I think I realized that probably an hour in, Shane. I think we both probably made that same realization probably around the similar time. And What I honestly think he was doing is that he was speaking to all of these groups between the intelligence agencies, all these different political agents themselves and organizations, and saying he's basically warning and showing that if and when Trump takes the presidency again, that he's probably going to be in a position to start actually like giving the information that we were all looking for in this interview. Because to your point, which I absolutely agree with, if he would have like actually dumped some of the purse out like we wanted, Biden and this entire administration and the woke left in the US and the woke left in Europe, they'd all be like, oh, this is a bunch of nonsense. This isn't real. Because like the people that are implicated in this, and particularly like the actual organizations like the UN and NATO, they're gonna have egg on their face when some of this shit comes out. They're not gonna be happy about it. And they're gonna steer their following, whatever the size is, to go further down the fanatical zealotry kind of like religious like ideology that they have and just disregard all information. They're like, there's no way that's true. Like that doesn't seem like a winning situation in like for Putin's position, in my opinion. It's boring, but I think he played it probably the right way.
Well, we got to remember that this guy has been a part of the intelligence industry for a long, long time. He knows what he's doing. Agree with him, disagree, whatever. But he is a very, very calculated person, and everything that he said with a specific intention behind it. I found it interesting that he kept on coming back to talking about history. He wanted to talk about history. It was an education thing. It started out where he even approached it. It was almost somewhat condescending. He's like, "Look, I'm going to school you up and tell you what's going on." And he knows his facts. The guy is sharp. I'm not exactly sure how old he is, but he definitely has all of his mental faculties and his cognitive abilities in where they need to be. But yeah, it was interesting how he was going through and the specific things that he talked about. That really painted the picture of a unified Russia and how that is how it was intended to be, and that's how it was by design. And he's really just trying to, bring the happy family back together. That was it was an interesting approach that he took, and also how I noticed that he created a correlation between where they are now and the journey that Germany took after the Treaty of Versailles at the end of World War I, and then their rise to power to lead into World War II. Because he referred to it a couple of times and said something like, at the fall of the USSR, why was there so much pressure that was put on Russia afterward? And it's been pressure and pressure and pressure. And to me, it kind of created a correlation between that and then Germany and the pressure in the because the treaty was it was beyond unfair what they did to them after World War I, and a lot of historians will attribute that to creating the grounds, the environment for Hitler to rise up, because the people were desperate, more or less, from the pressure that they were under. But anyway, yeah, he was flexing his knowledge. And he was demonstrating it, and I totally agree with you, Mike. I think that there were a lot of messages that were in there that he was communicating openly, but also some things under the radar, because he knows that this is going to be analyzed and that people are going to pick it apart. Obviously, intelligence agencies are going over it right now, and they will be, and they're going to be picking through, looking for eye ticks, looking for hand gestures, facial expressions, all that stuff. But anyway, that's all I got. I really had to say a lot because my mic wasn't working last time, and I just had to take with me. So there you go, Mike.
Can I, if you guys don't mind, I want to chime in real quick too, because off of what Gabe just said with the correlation between like the USSR, I think what he also did, Gabe, was that the way that he talked about how the collapse of the Soviet Union was instigated by the USSR leadership, like the Russian leadership itself.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like he was trying to also draw a correlation to the U.S. and what's going on right now, as like a combination of the Treaty of Versailles in Germany or the Treaty of Versailles and what's happening with Germany right now, and then also the intentional collapse of the Soviet Union with Russian leadership. That's what it seems like is happening in the U.S. right now. As almost like there's he might might be attempting to suggest that maybe like it's a Chinese driven like internal collapse because like wasn't it the communist forces within the USSR that led to the collapse? Is that what he was saying? I might have misinterpreted that. So like anybody that knows, like please correct me. But that's what it seemed like. And so like if that's what happened with the USSR, it almost might like seems like he's saying he's like, hey, look back to history. This is what happened bring about my Russia today.
Mm-hmm.
That might be what's happening in the US now, which is scary to think about.
It is because I mean the guy is definitely a student of history, and he was making all types of implications. I'd like to go back and watch it again to see what I can pick up on. I'll probably have to try a couple of times because a lot of it was pretty damn boring. You know, I mean, it was cool how they did the translation, the interpretation, but you know, what if couldn't they have gotten somebody like Samuel Jackson to do the voice of the interpreter? I mean, think about it. That would be a lot more entertaining.
Give money to Ukraine one more time.
That's right.
He'd have like motherfucker in there like every like 4 minutes.
Say it one more time.
I'm just glad we didn't have to read it all. I mean, for God's sakes, that was really. I was like, man, are we gonna have to sit here and let's listen to Vladimir talk the entire time and read everything he's saying? But yeah, good on Tucker for doing this. You know, one of the things that I knew was going to stick out, and he came back to it a couple times, was the eastern expansion of NATO into the 5 different waves. That was something that he went back to. He repeated. No shock there. Anybody that knows history, you can see the clips of Bill Clinton. You can see I think it's at least 2 clips of Bush, another one of Obama, all of these Eastern expansions, and if people really thought about it, the U.S. doesn't settle for that kind of stuff either, right? If you had a foreign power that was kind of the adversary in a multipolar world that you had a Cold War with, and all of a sudden, they're starting to move up from South America into Central America with a united front, and all of a sudden they're knocking at your door in Mexico. What do you think the U.S. is going to do? I mean,
zero tolerance.
Yeah, are we really going to sit back and say, oh yeah, hey Mexico, why don't you go ahead and join up with this other foreign organization that wants to see the demise, basically, or at least dominate U.S. politics? And I'm not saying right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm saying that the U.S. foreign policy would absolutely nip that in the bud before it even got going.
Yeah.
Especially if it had intercontinental ballistic missiles attached to it.
And like the other thing too, Shade, is that like I saw like the first hour as Putin's answer to Tucker's first asking of that question. Like why are you just now bringing this up in the last 2 years instead of 24 years ago? It's like, dude, like I had to do all this work to like to shift some of the public sentiment away from being Russia being like the sole giant boogeyman of the world.
Yeah.
Like, because like that's one thing that cracks me up about because like there's been topics similar to that brought up in like spaces conversations over the last the other point was conversations in some group chats I'm in around like the Texas border. It's another great example. It's like, well, why didn't Texas do this like years ago? Because public sentiment had to be shifted. We're talking about massive populations with big problems. Like those are flywheels that take time to get to the point of like actually being a justifiable argument to make.
I gotta agree with Wade. This was for the most anticipated interview maybe of our lifetime. This was absolutely boring as fuck.
Regardless of whether it was boring or not, I mean, I got a lot from it. Personally. Yeah. I've got a lot of notes. This whole thing is very emotional for a lot of people. There's a lot of people who are just literally freaking out over this. The fact that Tucker did this, the fact that it's been aired, there's people just completely losing their shit over this.
Kremlin cronies.
Yeah. My thought on it is like, first of all, to the people who are losing their shit and who don't want Tucker interviewing Putin, it's like, why? Like, what are you worried about? You know what I mean? Like, is everybody in America a baby? Are they idiots? Are they morons? Are they not able to think for themselves? Now, don't answer that question. there are some people that maybe do fall into those categories. But it's like, don't you think it's okay for someone to go do an interview and then just let the American people think for themselves? What's wrong with that? And the idea that we're actually seeing the other side of the story. Now, I'm not sitting here defending Putin. I don't know if anything he said tonight was true or not. I have no idea, right? Not for sure anyway. But what it got me thinking about is, well, if you only hear one side of the story forever, how do you know that's true? You don't. And you kind of have to have both sides to start to formulate what might be true, right? So anyway, that's what I took away from that. Other things that I thought were interesting is that he kept pressing Putin for victory conditions, like, you know, what is it going to take to end this? Which is what all normal people think about, right? When you think about warfare, there's always victory conditions. These are the goals, these are the objectives. When we accomplish that, we stop, right? That's in general, when you have military objectives, that's how military guys think. It's not always how politicians think, right? You have things like war on drugs and war on terror and war on fill in the blank, right? With no victory conditions, which creates a situation where it's just perpetual pumping money into it forever. Other things that I was thinking about is that he was explaining what happened in 2014 with what he's calling the coup. I was thinking, look, I don't know whether that's right or not. I think it probably is. Maybe it isn't. But regardless, why is the United States of America so intimately involved in the affairs of foreign nations all the damn time? I mean, seriously, that's
by the
ridiculous.
United States, you mean directly the State Department, the CIA, the DOD, DIA, the typical suspects. Not, you know, Americans want nothing to do for the most part with any of this kind of stuff. I think this is a really important distinction because, you know, there's so many people out there that are just so bot-like when we're talking about foreign nations, powers, the U.S. Listen, you know, it is the people versus the upper echelon elites. It is not Russia versus the American people. It is not the American people versus Russia or the Russian people. You've got this really tired, you know, and I guess conflation between those two groups. And I think it's really important for people to stop and say, hey, listen, this is not about the people of either one of these, you know, countries. Most of these people just want to live in peace. There are bad actors at the state level on both sides. And a lot of times they're doing things that, you know, most human beings would consider not reputable first and foremost, but maybe murderous, using force and coercion for quote unquote interest. I mean, some of the greatest atrocities that we've ever, you know, America or Russia for that matter has pulled off has always been in their state's interest. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to run through a couple of other observations here. One is, at one point, Tucker goes to Putin. He goes, you know, Schumer's over here saying that if we don't give more money to Ukraine so they can arm themselves, we're going to have to put American troops in Russia, or I'm sorry, in Ukraine. And he's like, I'm summarizing or paraphrasing. He goes, how do you feel about that? And he kind of laughed and he's like, don't you have anything better to do? Hilarious. It's like, he's like, you got like this flood of immigration. You have a literal invasion occurring in I'm paraphrasing it. He didn't say this verbatim, but you have a fucking invasion occurring in your homeland. You've got like your entire economic system is about to fucking implode and you want to put troops over here. It's like, what are you doing? So I thought that was pretty funny.
Well, and Alex and I chimed in when we were watching that too. I was like, and on top of that, like with all the Blovid stuff, like we pushed out a lot of our top troops, or at least our most principled troops.
Yeah.
And then so who are you going to put over there? It's not the guys the Ukrainians want. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
And
he didn't seem too worried.
Yeah, and on top of that, it's like, if you're like, what are you going to do to rectify that? You're going to engage in conscription? Like, then you're going to bring up the whole civil war topic into a conversation that like you really don't want to have. So like Putin's like, what are you guys doing?
Well, and then he goes on to say, listen, you already got Mercs here, followed by Poland in second for Mercs, and then Georgia in third. Like, he's listing who the mercs are and what their rank in terms of numbers is. Like he knows what's going on.
Yeah. He also sees the same news that our people see here in America, and knows that we can't recruit people to fill up our military anyway. And the ones that we are putting in, they're not all that scary.
I don't know. Talk to Dave Gillis.
I mean, you know, unless you're in the shower,
extra logistical equipment just to get them from one place to another or around the front line. You know what I mean? Note all those fatties up on the truck. We got to move.
They're scary in the mess hall. Good Lord.
Okay. Other things that I thought were interesting is at one point Tucker says to Putin something about, you know, don't you think this is, you know, wouldn't it be like propaganda? I'm not recalling exactly what it was, but something about propaganda. And it was the first time I saw Putin just literally start cracking up. Right? He's like laughing about it. And he's like, you can't beat the United States at the game of propaganda.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And we're all laughing because we know it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got the whole state of California working for you, man. Shit.
You guys literally spend trillions of dollars on the production of propaganda.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know.
That the entire world consumes as entertainment in the form of music and TV, television and movies.
Yeah, and they still suck. They're getting beat left and right. I wanted there's one piece that I thought was really, really interesting. You know, when he brought up that Tucker had tried to join the CIA. And thank God he didn't get in.
I missed that part.
So yeah, he brings this up and he, you know, kind of smiles at him while he's saying this. He's like, thank God you didn't get in.
Yeah.
And, you know,
that was interesting, huh?
I'll tell you, you know what, in the terms of 5th generation warfare, you know, for what's going on, I don't think, you know, with the emergence of Tucker on Twitter, you know, his you know, blowing up and really the rest of anybody who's out there who's got gigantic numbers, you know, I think there's still something to that. You know, they're just transitioning away from mainstream media I should say legacy media into what is now, you know, decentralized, but it's still mainstream media now. So if you've got these guys who are the mainstreamers and he's sitting there like, hey, Tucker, right? Like, I'm real glad you didn't get in, you know, kind of like wink, wink. Like, that guy knows some shit, man. And like, instead of, you know, possibly blowing Tucker's cover, which who knows? I'm just saying, you know, it presents a question where he's like, damn, man, like maybe, like, you know, in the back of Tucker's mind, he's like, maybe he has something, maybe he knows something, and that's
intimidation,
like,
for
that's
sure.
chilling effect for sure.
Yeah. I mean, did you see Tucker's face? That was the first time I think Tucker was uncomfortable that entire interview.
Very.
Yeah.
Well, and it was really smart of Putin to wait, because I'm assuming that was like probably an hour in, like at least.
Yeah.
Because I didn't catch it. I was busy doing other stuff, but like he waited that long for Tucker to get comfortable. And then once he got comfortable and he started getting into the more like complicated, more meaningful questions, he's like,
he backed him
I'm
up.
glad you didn't get in, man.
Yeah. All right. Three more observations. I'll be fast. The next one was he made the observation about the US dollar being weaponized, and that it was a gigantic strategic mistake because it is the US's most valuable tool of foreign policy, and we're destroying the tool basically by weaponizing the dollar. The next thing he said, and I didn't know this, but apparently, well, at least according to him, that after all these sanctions, that Russia is now the top economy in Europe.
Wild.
I was like, what?
$240 billion in trade with China last year.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just China. So I was like, dang, okay, that's interesting. And then here's the last one. And I thought this was really funny. Tucker goes to him at one point. He's like, he's trying to figure it out. Cause like, he basically says, look, you've been dealing with all these presidents. You've been in charge over in Russia for a really long time. You kind of know all the power centers in America. He's like, who runs America? And Putin kind of thought about it for a second. He's like, and I'm going to paraphrase this, but he's like, I don't know. Your country is confusing as shit.
We used to, in one of our intelligence talks, we used to have a sign on the wall that said, it was a quote from a Russian general, and he says, I fear the day we ever have to have a war with them, with the United States, because they have doctrine, but they never follow it, and we have no idea what they're ever going to do. So,
oh, that's so
just
sad.
multiply that times 10 in the government, and there's some truth to it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when you look at and Gabe, I'll shut up. I swear to God. There was one that like when we don't know doctrine and all that kind of stuff, and you've got all these very shadowy organizations operating without any type of real oversight on unlimited budgets, basically. He started naming a list of people at some point that included Condoleezza Rice. I think it included some other defense secretaries in the past. And
He said the former president.
Yeah. And I don't think the former president in terms of this, like Trump, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know who he meant, but did you hear? And he said it twice, and they repeated it. He described them as being safe and sound twice.
Yeah.
So SS, right? Like if you're talking about SS, you're talking about, and he obviously leaned very hard into getting rid of the neo-Nazi type of culture in Ukraine specifically. Like, I don't know, but if I'm going to go back and I'm gonna have to go through that part again, but sometimes that particular type of pointing, that type of wording is, coming from a guy from statecraft, like this is one of those things where you're going, look at who these people are, right? Like if you're going to use that kind of language,
and
it's weird.
He specifically, in that line of thought, he specifically mentioned Operation Paperclip. If I'm not mistaken, because it was, if not, they were really, really close in that section of the conversation, because it was also related to the denazification question, or the denazification answer, as far as like the mission for success in Ukraine. Actually, no, I was wrong. So like the denazification came with Operation Paperclip, and then your point came up later, and I was just like, okay, so in a way that could kind of follow back to the U.S., right? Because like there are some interesting things, like for example about Wernher von Braun being involved with NASA. I've heard some claims from that guest Mad Minute guy on the Tacticon podcast, where he mentioned, I've been trying to find it. I need to do more research, but he suggested that he had seen claims that Wernher von Braun still practiced like his Nazi ties when he came over to work at NASA for the U.S. Like he went so far as to claim that he was hanging Jewish individuals like at whim at NASA. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's quite the claim. But if you're taking both of those like points, Shane, like if he is claiming that they had ties to the SS, like Condoleezza Rice and whoever this former president was, which I'm thinking is one or both of the Bushes, probably. Like then you start looking at the basis for leadership in the intelligence and alphabet soup organizations, and whether they have Nazi ties, which I would argue that they do.
We're sitting here funding Ukraine that is openly, you've got a Nazi,
Azov battalion,
Nazi culture right now. We have to fund, like, and that's the thing is, you've got leadership saying we have to fund these guys. We have,
and the biolabs were being run by those organizations, which he in the past he put out on Twitter that he had a dossier or a document of all of the biolabs and their relationships with the alphabet soup organizations.
Yeah.
And who led them.
So the one person here who probably is most qualified to be analyzing all this stuff has been silent the entire time. So I'd like to hear what Randy has to say about all this.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys jumped into it pretty good. First of all, I sound all right tonight.
Yes.
Great, man.
Oh, good. All right. Right on. So Obviously, just a master class in put on by somebody who knows what fifth generation warfare is. First of all, many of our administration don't even acknowledge that it exists yet. Putin is well versed in what's going on with this fifth generation warfare and how to use it. And he's right in that many within the United States, propaganda is strong, but to what purpose? And if you look at the tenets of fifth generation warfare, all of the influence operations are designed to affect the battlefield, right? And when you look at the battlefield here in the U.S., what is it? Well, we don't know yet. We really don't know. There's no war. There's no kinetic war going on yet, right? But you look over in Russia and Ukraine, obviously there's kinetic warfare going on. What is the results of fifth generation warfare going on there? And what is the propaganda? Do we, if you look, the foundation of this war for Putin is what happened, what was it, in 682 AD or something way back then, all the way up to, World War One. The whole history. Why would he go into 30 minutes of diatribe on history? First of all, who knew all that? Probably none of us, right? And I guarantee most of the American populace don't know any of that history. So now I'm not justifying what's happening. What I'm saying is, if Putin, if he's putting that much effort into what the story is about that, how Ukrainians are really Russians to begin with, and they were, led aside by Nazis, then it's kind of justifiable. So in his mind, right? So from his perspective, I gained a lot just really getting inside his head and really understanding what the reasons for the murder that's going on there in Ukraine. Now, another thing you can step back and think about is how much value do they put on human life, right? For these geopolitical ambitions. Well, that takes a second look at, right? Because here in the United States, we value life a little bit too much sometimes, and I don't know. So those are some of my main observations on Putin himself. You guys hit all the other points. The U.S. dollar, talking about it, talking about a border. Go work on your own things, and that's basic. That's basic fifth generation warfare, or hey, go worry about this, don't worry about this kind of thing. So obviously he's got an agenda there. He wants us to forget about Ukraine. What? I get it. So those are some of my basic observations. There's a lot more.
I like how he distributed some of the conversation back to Germany too. He's like, why are they staying quiet? Like, they've been intentionally collapsed. And Shane, to your point, while we were watching, he's like, and the German politicians are welcoming it. It's like, he's like, what's going on there? If Nord Stream was such a big deal, why isn't Germany the one who's getting pummeled the most? Because Ukraine is also preventing Russian gas from flowing into them. Why are they staying quiet?
Yeah,
it's because their politicians are on the take.
So we've been talking about this Tucker Putin interview for about 40 minutes now. You guys want to talk about Bitcoin a little bit?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I like Bitcoin.
Bitcoin veterans.
Hey Shane, if you look in the Intel OPSEC channel,
Okay.
And there's that video. So Gabor Gurbax, who is an executive over at Van Eck, by the way, they're one of the companies that launched a Bitcoin ETF. He had a tweet earlier, and it was a video of former President Obama talking about Bitcoin.
This is really good.
I think this is worth airing. It's only 39 seconds, but man, he said some amazing things in this very short period of time.
How long ago was this video done? Do you know?
Okay, now that's the question, right? So Gabor just tweeted it today, but
I'm pretty sure it's older.
Yeah, that's what I've been told, is that it's much older.
All right, let's let it rip.
The question we now have to ask is if technologically it is possible to make an impenetrable device or system where the encryption is so strong that there's no key, there's no door at all. What mechanisms do we have available to even do simple things like tax enforcement? Because if in fact you can't crack that at all, government can't get in, then everybody's walking around with a Swiss bank account in their pocket.
Can't have that.
He's on the mission.
I'm gonna put a Swiss bank on the back.
Target indicators.
Okay, so
how does he know what Swiss bank accounts? You know, impenetrable, right? Like that's only for the elite class.
Mm.
I want to say that video's from 2021.
It might be. Well, I had somebody this was in our company chat earlier today, and somebody had mentioned that it was like really old, like 8 years ago. And I got to thinking about that. I'm like, man, if that was 8 years ago, and he understood what Bitcoin was that succinctly 8 years ago, that's a little mind blowing to me. Because you look at all the other people that are supposedly in charge, and they don't know shit. You know what I mean? They're having this discussion about, well, we want to get Janet Yellen's insights on the crypto industry. And it's like, what insights?
That turtle doesn't even understand the actual economics.
Either that or she's really good at pretending she doesn't.
Yeah.
And so like a lot of the kind of stuff that many people say at the congressional level and up, like would give the indication that one of two things: either they're super ignorant about Bitcoin and how it works, they don't understand fully the implications of it, or B, they do understand it and they're just really fucking good liars. I think it's I think it's A.
I think it's 90% A. There might be at a 10%, you know.
And even then, they don't really deeply understand it. Like there are pro Bitcoin people, right? You got Lemus, you've got Cruz, and a couple of other people that are pro Bitcoin. But like, I've never actually seen them sit down and be able to really clearly elucidate why Bitcoin can do what it can do. It's a very surface level understanding of it.
You know, something that I've learned through my years of being involved in different corporate environments and even interactions with government entities is that there are so many people, the majority of people that are supposed to be the most well-informed, that are in the most those roles of being decision makers, that really have no idea what the hell they are doing at all. And then there's going to be, you know, about a small percentage that are intermixed within them that know exactly what the hell's going on, and they're using the other ones as tools. So they're basically the useful idiots in those positions of power that don't know anything, and quite frankly, they're too afraid to ask because everybody's going to find out that they got to where they are just by being a moron like Forrest Gump. And then there's a couple of smart people in there that are using them, and you see this everywhere, and it's sure to be the same in government on those levels too. So that's my take on that.
Well, you got to look at Ross Ulbricht too during the Barack Obama administration. Was it 2011 when Silk Road went down? For the U.S. government to take on, I don't know, what was it, almost 200,000 Bitcoin or something like that at the time. Pretty hefty amount, and at the same time, they're throwing a kid in prison for a double life sentence plus whatever 40 years. That's got no violent history, no criminal record. The story that they made up about the guy in terms of having, contracts for killers and all that kind of stuff, none of those charges ever stuck. That's not what Ross Ulbricht was ever charged with. And so for Barack Obama to comment on this kind of stuff, maybe, that was one of those precipices where, it was that igniter for him, I guess, that kind of made him have to understand what was going on. I mean, if you're the president of the United States and you've got this organization that's standing up where people can trade without you and, circumvent the entire system that you're in control of, especially for a guy that's talking about positive rights and doing all these ridiculous things out there in terms of, overall control, and the same guy that came out and signed the legislation that reauthorized, domestic propaganda dissemination, right? Like, maybe like that was Barack Obama's entry into understanding exactly what Bitcoin was.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it at all.
Yeah, he's a scary dude to me. I think that he knows a lot. I think he's one of those guys that knows too many things, and and he is definitely. I'm not trying to get us yanked out of here, but that man is about as involved as a person could get in global events and agendas right now. His level of influence has not declined at all. If anything, it has increased. And I'm telling you, somebody who's got the same last name as him is very likely going to be sitting in the Oval Office next year. That's all I got to say about that.
I have thought the same thing, Gabe.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah. But something interesting though that I do want to bring back around to the interview just for a moment that stood out to me was that something like this. You have to take a look at the way that so many of these wars are fueled and how they gain support in the minds of general public, and how we have so many people putting the Ukraine flag on their little social medias and all that. How people are just Russia's the boogeyman and that whole mindset. But the thing is, I mean, you have to think about what Bitcoin, and especially as you get into different layers of freedom tech like Nostr and other areas of ways that we can have open communication, what that really does to the public support of things like this. Because when we can break down those barriers and all sides of the story are more readily available to everyone, then it kind of changes the way that things work. And it doesn't mean there isn't going to be propaganda flying from every side, and then you get deep fakes in the mix. But it's interesting if we can get to a place where we can have trustless, verifiable communication and information that is flowing freely for people to have access to. I just wonder what that does. And I tell you, there was a moment, and we were kind of laughing about it when it happened, but I mean, to me, it sounded like he opened up the door and rolled out the red carpet to Elon Musk. And he was like, hey, man, come on over here. If they're going to give you a hard time in the U.S., man, we got a spot for you. Come help us with our rockets. Come help us. And when they started talking about AI, man, the tone of the conversation changed right there. And he's like, man, I don't really know much about that kind of stuff. Only smart people do. Yeah,
bullshit.
Okay. Okay.
Well, and because I'll make one comment on that, Gabe, is that when we were all laughing about that, getting brought up, the first thing I thought of was now Elon's going to start feeling some pressure from our administration because he's signaling in the affirmative for Elon so hard. They're gonna start really applying some negative pressure on him to try and keep him from getting cozied up with Putin, because I guarantee Elon is going to watch this if he wasn't watching it while we were. And he's like,
no, he was. He tweeted that he was.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, perfect.
Yeah.
Very strategic play on Putin's part. I mean, you not only sharp as attack, but the tactics that he's using are fantastic. And I mean, one of the last questions out there, in terms of this whole like, hey, maybe Tucker isn't who maybe a lot of us think he is by chance. Like sitting there asking for the release of a prisoner, a political prisoner, maybe
Yeah, I thought that was weird.
Very weird.
Really ballsy.
I was like, why are you doing that?
And ballsy for what reason?
And to say, keep hammering into him and leaning into Tucker saying this has to be done professionally through the
non-public means,
his the service channels, basically, right? Like this is the CIA, and this is our clandestine operations. This is how this is going to be worked out. Like, you're not going to sit here and like badger me, right? You non-CIA guy, right?
I tell you what that interview makes me want to do is it makes me want to stack more sats. That's what it makes me want to do. Because man, we're in unprecedented times. And to me that's the first most important thing that any of us can do. So that's why I dollar cost average with Swan Bitcoin.
This, by the way, is why no coiners or people who don't buy Bitcoin think Bitcoiners are crazy. Because it's like, no matter what happens, at the end of the day, Bitcoiners are like, shit, I got to stack some more sats.
Yeah. I don't have enough.
Price is up, buy more.
Yeah, price is up. I don't know. Price is up. I like slow down a little bit. See, it's up. What, 45 now? 45.
Yeah. $2,000 increase today, guys. That's
nice.
Hey, Randy, you looked like you were about to like comment on something about the whole Obama topic. Do you want to? Was there anything you wanted to mention?
So, Putin mentioned a little bit. You look at people's motive, basically. That's what he was saying, and then you look at their capability, right? And when you put those two things together, then things get done. That's a basic intelligence task of, when you work in intelligence, there is no absolutes. There's no smoking gun. There's nothing. All you do is put pieces together. What's the most probable scenario? And of course, he was talking about the Nord Stream getting blown up and you'll never hear the United States admit to it. You'll never find a smoking gun, right? But when it comes to Obama, it's the same thing. We look at his motive. We over his time period in office, and as much as we know about him, we know what his motives are. They're basically, obviously left of center. To put it mildly, and more on the tyranny side, if you will, control of government, right?
At the least, establishing a dynasty beyond his 2 terms.
There you go. And he's got the brains. He's no dummy. I mean, I never thought he was a dummy. I didn't agree with 99% of what he did and said, but he said it well. And he was actually pretty skillful, right? So that being said, take what he just said in that clip we just watched, all right, and look at the policies being put forth today. It's the same thing. Now you may not have dummies in government being able to speak like Obama did at that point, but they're acting out on those kinds of orders. If you look at regulation, if you look at all the attacks that Bitcoin is coming under, and so the same process that Putin was just talking about, you've got motive and you've got means. Yeah, just like you said, Gabe, their fingerprints are there. That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And the interesting thing about that to me, Randy, is the whole topic around these kind of like flaccid threats, supposedly from Hamas, of cutting the cables at the bottom of the Red Sea for the internet that supposedly handle 17% of global internet traffic. And people on Twitter did not skip a beat. They're like, Hamas doesn't have the capability to go that deep. So like, who's actually going to be the ones that's going to do that if it does happen?
Right. They're floating to see if the idea would float.
Yeah. But don't.
You guys remember this one though? This was fun.
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We
Yeah.
will into it.
Yep.
But how will you do that?
How?
Exactly. Since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control.
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it. If
I mean,
There you go.
yeah, there's not exactly a smoking gun coming from a dementia patient, but like, yeah.
I mean, it's just like Obama having stated on 60 Minutes that like if he had it his way after his 2 terms, he would be in the ear of the next president, just telling him what to do and what to say.
Well, and here's the thing is, Biden didn't come up with this on his own, right? Like Biden isn't even aware of the Nord Stream pipeline in his own, right? Like he's hearing conversations being held, whether it's with state officials of whatever ilk. Like this is something that he's heard. He's a little bit off the cuff on it, and he comes out and just brazenly is like, "Oh yeah, well we have our ways." Like, come on.
Obama's in his ear, like, dude, you don't say that. Like, what the hell,
Idiot.
God, damn it, Joe, not again.
Oh, God.
We talked about this.
It's funny back in the day when I think it was Obama was coming out of office, and all of these memes of Joe Biden, like not again, like it was classic. It was great. It was some of the best comedy you ever saw. And part of me back in, I don't know, was it 2019 when the last election was going? I was like, man, if you get Joe Biden in office, this might actually be pretty hysterical based on all the memes that were coming out. Like. But unfortunately, it's just sad, and really,
It's hysterical because it's so sad.
Oh, jeez, tragic comedy, I guess.
Which isn't the last we were wanting.
Yeah. We're gonna wrap this thing up at 9:00 tonight. Have a little bit of an hour show since it was late anyway. Don't want to keep all the youngsters up past their bedtime. But any parting thoughts from you guys on anything that's going on, anything we witnessed, maybe something we haven't?
I will say that this interview just made me even more confident that this election season is going to be very interesting. That's all I'm going to say.
Agreed.
I think it was interesting that Biden came out with his statement the same time, like at the closing statement. When was the last time he came out and gave a statement?
Yeah. There was probably teams of analysts tearing apart everything Putin said in real time, drafting the speech right there on the spot. And they're like, okay, shit, we need to address this. We need to address this. These are things you need to say.
Well, and Randy, to that point, like, because I know you and I were both listening to it. It was funny how because they were like I was expecting it to be about this interview, which he didn't talk anything about it, which I think was probably an intelligent move on his team's part, like to not address it at all. It was all about, for those that missed it, it was all about the documents that the DOJ had with, like, everybody made a stink about Trump having documents back at the Mar-a-Lago estate, and they went investigated Biden because everybody seemed to forgot that he bragged about having classified documents next to his Corvette in his garage. And all he could manage to do in that press conference was just retie it back to Trump. He's like, this is Trump's fault. Like, we just want to make sure that everybody understands that we weren't as bad as Trump. Like, Trump did things worse. Trump this, Trump that. I'm like, dude, like, your administration cannot keep Trump out of your damn mouth.
Can't.
Like,
he's doing it. He just did it again with the border crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He literally said the whole reason that we have an immigration crisis is because of Trump.
Him and
Yep.
Schumer. and the rest of the media is just sitting there going, "Yep, this is
Yep.
Trump's fault.
It is.
He's not in office, but it's his fault." Like, golly, what a
It's
bunch
like,
of
yo,
journalism.
hello, he's not the president. What the fuck are you talking about?
Holding office. He has
They started rebuilding his wall. Even they started actually
Oh,
building his wall.
man.
What, in like 2022? I mean, they built like 100 feet of it, but like it's just like
Oh,
you got.
did you guys see that Nikki Haley lost to no one on this?
Yeah.
None of these names, none of these candidates.
Yeah.
None of these candidates, yeah.
not lost. She got a country
She got
ass.
crushed.
I mean, it was close.
Destroyed, right? Like 63% of the vote was like none of these candidates.
She was in the teens and nobody.
Oh, man.
Man, that's pretty rough.
I did see a meme today that called today Trump Tucker Day because of what's happening with SCOTUS, obviously, and we haven't even talked about that. But
Oh Lord.
it looks like it's going to be an easy decision.
Yeah, I
all
forgot
the-
about that.
So so far, even Ketanji Brown, obviously left of center, there is also making statements in support, basically, of Trump's.
Do you guys want to
Trump's-
lay odds that we actually have an election in November?
Dude, I've been revisiting this and having this conversation like every 2 days with people, and I would not put it past this administration to come up with some nonsense to suggest that it's just not the right time to
Disease
change
X.
leadership.
Disease X, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got to be disease. I don't know. It's,
Or I don't think that a cyber warfare false flag attack on the U.S. energy grid is. I think that that's maybe a one-timer to scare the shit out of people to get away with some nonsense. But I don't know that you can actually shut down a country over it because you can't keep that up.
I
You
think
know what
I think it's also too soon following the movie, right? Leave the World Behind, because
I don't know.
I think it would
There's
be
a lot of
just there'd
stupid
just
people.
I think there'd just be too much recency bias.
But
Man.
you can't turn the most dangerous people in the country, in terms like you can't turn off their power, because if you do now there's no rule of law. There's like now the rule of law is out the window.
All the doomers, the preppers, the veterans, they're just gonna lock in there like, all right, this is what we prepared for.
Yeah, like now it's game on, and you're sitting there like, well,
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. This is the part that I always come back to on this is that, like, the argument can be made, well, they'll never do that because then you have the implosion of the country. Okay, well, what if that's the point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what if the entire point is they want the balkanization of the United States of America? What if America is the last thing standing in the way of living in the pods, eating the bugs, doing the fucking thing that they tell you?
Yeah.
What if America, being the last armed population on the planet, is the last thing standing in the way of total control? And what if they would be completely happy with a civil war in America, or they would be completely happy with the balkanization of the United States of America? What if that actually is the plan?
Well, it's like you said, Randy, Americans tend to value life more than other countries do. What happens
maybe a little too much
if they shift that, so that value that we place on it decreases through the demonization of other people. So
okay,
and there's one other thing I wanted to add too, because I think we were talking about it in one of the group chats earlier this week. Was I have heard, I haven't confirmed, so this is speculation, but I have heard that some of the presumed numbers as far as illegal immigrants that have filled this country amount to close to 20 million now.
Yeah.
Which that math, if you stack up
the
currently serving and the veteran populations, that tips the scales not in our favor.
That too.
And then the other thing too is that people talk about like the amount of weapons that are owned specifically by U.S. inhabitants. I think it's like 120 to 1 or something like that. Another thing you have to keep in mind is that a lot of those groups or those individuals are ones that hold 10, 20, 30 weapons at a time. So those stats aren't necessarily super reliable, right? And if they have that much weaponry in their own home and they own that much, if I had that much, I would not be willing to share with very many people.
It's because you're just selfish like that, Mike.
I am. I'm very selfish.
You should just like
My sats, my ammo, my butter, my staves.
I'm going to say one thing that's just kind of scary, and that is that, if you've seen the footage of the people that are coming into our country, you know that a significant portion of them are military-aged males.
Yeah.
Unless my information is flawed, but that's what I'm seeing. And they don't have families with them, and they mix in some women and children just to kind of make the cameras see it and eat it up. But the fact is, we've got a bunch of men coming over here, and they're on their own. And the way it works is when men are escaping from somewhere, when they're escaping from a war-torn area, they bring their families with them. But when they're going somewhere to make war, they leave their families behind.
Mhm.
Well, and take it back to Tucker. There's also the interview that he had with Brett Weinstein, where Brett Weinstein went down to Central America in the I don't know what the name of the gap was in Central America, but it's the only gap in the Pan American Highway where there's like thick jungle. And he went down there and he looked around, and the UN and American Red Cross are the ones facilitating and leading those people through that gap and to the buses that go straight to the Texas border.
yeah,
Yep.
and we're likely funding it actually
Yeah,
with U.S. taxpayer dollars.
because we pay like 3/4 of the UN budget or whatever. Or we
Okay,
commit
here's the
so-
thing. That's an entirely different can of worms. Look at Shane's face. He's like, guys, we got to wrap because we could spend
That's what
an
the
hour
call. That's
talking
what the
about
call
this.
was.
You started it, Mike. We're gonna have
His
to. we're gonna have to
wife's
bring
like,
this
"Come
next
on, we gotta
time.
go. We gotta go."
Hey, let's end it on that cheery note.
Love you guys.
Hey, the good news is, hey, Bitcoin exists, and you know
And
what?
it's up.
This community exists, and it's going to be awesome to see all of you in person at least once this year. Because I'm planning on doing as much as I can to make multiple attempts to do that. I think Bit Black Boom is coming up. What, April?
Yep.
Don't
Yep.
they have I think they've got a veteran discount out there. I know there's one for Nashville
It's
too.
really good. The veteran discount for BitBlock Boom. They've never given a discount like this. It's a deep discount. It's almost free. Contact us. Also, we
Yes.
just got contacted. I was just in discussions with the guys who are doing the halving party down in El Salvador. They're giving us an awesome discount as well.
Nice.
If you're a veteran adjacent, you want a deep discount on going to the halving party in El Salvador, talk to us. We will hook you up.
We've got the codes for all the great Bitcoin events that are happening in
Oh, yeah.
2024.
A lot of love for veterans this year, so come on out.
Guess that's where we'll kind of cut it off. Remember,
It's a happy note.
That's good.
proper shouldering of weapons, sight alignment, sight picture, all the. Hey, I'm confident in the veterans in this community and the rest of them out there that those are the kind of things that really matter when you get into a real bad situation. So just remember that. But
Yes,
from all of us here on a very late night for Bitcoin veterans, hey, it is not all doom and gloom. We've got a lot to be thankful for and be optimistic about, and in this ever changing world that Putin talks about. We are, I think, the masters of our own destiny here. And if we're going to stand up and do something, I think there's a lot of people that are going to join us. A lot of people are going to be looking to this group. So keep up the great work. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.
Dos Vidania.
That's
Stack
the
your
done.
sats.